welcome to REI Talk. It is our bi-monthly investment webinar brought to you by Real Estate Investor in conjunction with Bitprop, our sponsors for today. My name is Neil Peterson. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Real Estate Investor, and we've been serving the South African residential and commercial real estate investors and the property industry for over 14 years through our digital magazine, our online content and news, the live and virtual events, webinars, masterclasses, conferences, videos, and podcasts. And we keep the starter and you, the savvy investor, up to date with the latest inside investor information, education, investment opportunities, both for newbie and the savvy property investors, whether you're a landlord, a developer, a property professional, or any property practitioner. As always, I'm excited to be your host and moderator for this webinar today. And our topic is quite a unique one, and it's investing into township property, where you have the opportunity to partake in impact investing. And we'll find out what that is a little bit later. And you do it in a fund to build properties in township areas. So just a little background on what we're going to be covering this morning. Affordable housing and as an investment opportunity, and obviously the socio-economic issues. And we do know that it is particularly difficult to get a title deed for reconstruction and development program housing, better known as RDP housing. And many people who live in township communities may have the land home without the title deed. So from a financial point of view, this means that the asset does not exist. And this is where Bitprop enters the fold alongside you as investors. So we'll discuss how Bitprop and they will prove how these assets are valuable investment opportunities for you. They also assist owners through the process of securing their title deed or proving their ownership in other ways. So in addition to this, Bitprop builds and they develop quality backyard rental flats, leveraging their assets to provide a new income stream for the owners. And these backyard rental flats help not only the owners of the home, but also investors willing to invest into the building of these flats. So everybody will ask, why invest in township properties? Well, first of all, you mitigate your risk by investing into a collective investment opportunity. And you can achieve a profitable ROI, return on investment, for 5 years. Commitment, that's the commitment, 5 years. And in some cases, we'll discuss what the returns are, around north of 15%, as I understand it. But we will discuss that a bit later. And also the third reason is you can be part of solving a socioeconomic issue which is faced by the majority of South Africans. So without further ado, let's meet our panelists and our township property experts. And our first panelist, Claire, she has a master's degree in architecture, which she acquired in 2014. And as an architect and urbanist, she has extensive experience in the urban development sector. Her career focus switched to informal settlement upgrading, community-driven housing, and urban development projects with a strong community focus. Her interest in the backyard rental sector and passion for innovation and entrepreneurship came from a feasibility study she conducted in 2018. And in 2019, this saw the conception of Bitprop, where she started to run the architectural arm of the company. She is the head architect of Bitprop, and her name is Claire de Trevaux. So welcome to you, Claire. Lovely to have you on board today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm always excited to be a part of these conversations.
Yes, and I must say we thrive upon your passion for the business. I always have seen you so passionately, so it's great to have you here. And then, of course, our second panelist, Prince, and he's the founder of Hispani. It's a data insight and sales platform that has an on-demand sales force of agents that provide on-demand data insight and product distribution services into frontier markets. His background in economics and inclusive innovation with key areas of interest include development of frontier markets. He looks to deliver financial services as an ecosystem into the informal sector of these emerging markets. He provides valuable insight to Bitprop through his experience in product advisory and development work in the financial service and energy space for global businesses in reinsurance, credit, payments, retail markets, innovation, and international development, including energy production, all with a lens into emerging markets. So, wow, that is quite an introduction. His name is Prince Wadai, and he's the Emerging Markets Advisor for Bitprop, and he's also the co-founder and CEO of Hispani. So welcome to you, Prince. It's lovely having you on board.
Thanks a million, Neil. Thanks for having me, and good morning to your listeners as well.
Absolute pleasure, and we look forward to the discussion. And then last but not least is Dylan, and he began his career running a pilot project for Swedish-based Universal Avenue, a digital services marketplace looking to empower freelancers to consult with small businesses. And when Universal Avenue decided to launch in South Africa, he became the country manager, leading a team of more than 10 digital consultants and a portfolio of digital tools. He formed part of Bitprop's founding team in 2019, and he's worked extensively on finding and training new homeowners, managing tenants, and marketing Bitprop in general. His role as manager of marketing and operations involves overseeing and the scaling of Bitprop's team, capabilities, and public awareness to be able to reach more homeowners across the country. His name is Dylan Walls, and he is the marketing and operations manager for Bitprop. So welcome to you, Dylan.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Neil. Looking forward to it.
Great. And lastly, I'm just going to mention one of the co-founders. He was also scheduled as one of our original panelists, Carl Semelli, who's also one of the co-founders of Bitprop. Unfortunately, he had to excuse himself today because of a family bereavement, but he is also one of the major drivers and co-founders of the Bitprop business, and he's a well-known international entrepreneur who emanates from Sweden but lives in South Africa with his wife and 4 children. So Carl's passion for property came when, as a successful entrepreneur, he found that more than 30 million people in South Africa had no official proof of ownership of land that they resided on. And he started by contributing to finance the legal transfer of official property land title transfers for a number of tenants, and in doing so, open up this asset class for investment via the Kaya Land Project. And this really kickstarted the big idea of Bitprop. And today I'm really excited to uncover this discussion and the opportunities. And so without further ado, I'm going to get to our panel. And I'm going to start off with you, Claire, because Claire, you were also one of the co-founders as Dylan was at the start of Bitprop. Tell us, where did it all start and what brought you into the backyard rental space in the first place?
Thanks, Neil. I always want to call you Paul. I'm going to share my screen in just a little bit, but actually, let me just do it now, and then it's... So, essentially, we are Bitprop. Let me go back a couple. Can you see my screen?
We can see it, but yes,
okay.
Now we can see it, the full screen there. Thank you very much, Claire.
Okay, perfect. So we're Bitprop, and our sort of tagline is enabling micro property development at a macro scale. And what we really set out to do is enable large-scale investment into small-scale property development. And we do that to build wealth for individual homeowners, but it also means that it lowers the risk for investors. And really, one of our big visions is to improve living conditions across South African townships. So I think just to take a moment to really kind of grapple with what we're talking about when we talk about South African townships, because I think there can often be a bit of misconception around like a South African township versus an informal settlement. And so really South African townships, and specifically we work in Khayelitsha, they were designed as residential sort of dormitory spaces. And the large spatial development frameworks for these areas were primarily just big suburbs of homes with like a school, with a designated area for a school, maybe for a small mall, but there was no consideration for how these spaces would be livable neighborhoods in terms of having mixed use opportunities. And so what we have across South Africa and in Cape Town is we have these huge suburbs on the outskirts of our cities that are just that. They're designed for residential use, and homeowners or residents of South African townships typically have to travel in and out of the township to get to economic opportunities, to get to work opportunities, to get to recreational opportunities even. And so really Khayelitsha was designed for about 20,000 households in the late 80s. And then at the turn of apartheid, we saw the RDP program come into play, the Reconstruction and Development Housing Program. And what that aimed to do was to give people access to Kenya. So it was both about giving South Africans earning less than 3,500 Rand a month a home, but it was also supposed to be a starter home, and the title deed associated with that land and the home was supposed to kickstart this kind of wealth journey for individuals. For a number of reasons, that didn't play out as the intention was. It's obviously very hard to maintain a home. Sometimes the government has an 8-year preemptive clause on the resale of RDP homes. So some people would sell the house informally before they actually got the title deed into their own name. Then the property becomes quite encumbered. But all of that sort of messiness aside, what we really started to see in 2015 was this phenomenon of backyard housing. So there'd always been this idea of, backyarders and backyard shacks, where the owner of the home would allow people to come and put up like a little shack, and they would connect to their electricity, and they would use their bathroom. And backyard shacks across Cape Town are really hard to map. But some smart planners have looked at the numbers and have estimated that about 60% of homes, on the periphery have some form of backyard development. But in 2015, 2016, what we really started to see was this emergence of the formalization of these backyard rental units. And what started to happen is property kind of researchers, architects kind of got interested in this phenomenon. And there's this idea that there's a spectrum of developers that have started to emerge in township spaces. So on the one end, you have the homeowner developer who just gets a bunch of money together somehow, either borrowing from family members, maybe they are part of a stokvel. A lot of the women actually buy material on credit from a material supply store, and then they put up a couple of units and they rent those units out, and it becomes a sustainable source of income. On the other end of the developer spectrum, we started to notice young entrepreneurs who were buying dilapidated properties, either knocking the original RDP down completely or adding onto it and developing blocks and then doing that with a number of properties and sort of becoming a bit of having a portfolio of these properties across the townships. And when we started to do the research and unpack really just trying to understand how people were accessing finance, what we found is that there were two major gaps specifically for the homeowner type developer. And the first gap was access to finance. It's often impossible to get a loan because of sometimes the title deed issues. Obviously, South Africans tend to have there's a phenomenon of blacklisting across South Africa. I don't know the numbers offhand, but a large portion of people are blacklisted. So that if the property has been sold informally and there's the title deed issue, you can't borrow against your property. And so what we noticed is that it was a clear opportunity for an innovative financing model to build these backyard rental units, which there clearly is a market for. And the other big gap we identified was the gap for professional services. A lot of the time, homeowners were just getting a builder to come in and kind of build little bit by little bit by little bit, as and when they could afford it. And what this meant is that the design of the spaces and often the overall finish of the spaces wasn't of a high quality. What a lot of homeowners were doing is they would build the shell and people would move in immediately and they would collect rental for a couple of months and then they would put tiles in, and then they would collect rental for another few months and then they would put the ceilings in. And so we kind of saw this opportunity to develop a company that offered both the professional services and also the financing, so that the development could be done, instead of being done incrementally, could be done all at once. It could be a much better quality finish, and offer tenants a really great living space. And that's really kind of how Bitprop was born. And we kind of work through this process where we identify the homeowner. We do a bit of homeowner education where we really try and help the person understand what it means to have tenants on your property, what your responsibilities will be as a property manager, that sort of stuff. And we do the architectural design and we get the regulatory approvals. And then we physically build, not us on the panel, but Bitprop physically builds the units. I have been known to move a brick or two around the site.
As an architect, I would expect that of you, Claire.
And once the units are complete, then we really take hold of, we partner with the homeowner, but we lead the project management and the cash flow. So tenants pay us directly, which Dylan will talk a little bit more about this process. And then I won't talk about the home loan process in this, but essentially what Bitprop does is, this is just a little kind of stop motion of the property before. On this property, we added 8 rental units and the value was about $500,000 before our units. And now the property is valued at about 1.5 million. And after the Bitprop rental units, the homeowner is able to earn 26,000 Rand a month. So right now, as it is, that rental is shared with Bitprop. And again, Dylan will talk a little bit more about the funding model and the financing a little bit later. But this is what we do. As you can see, this is the original unit in the front, and then we add on, this again is an 8-unit development that we did. And the interior of our units all have an ensuite bathroom. There's a separate, they designed in such a way, so the bathrooms in this blue space, they designed in such a way that even though they're open plan and they're bachelor units, you can get the feel of a kitchen space, a bedroom space, and a little lounge space. This is a bit blurry, sorry. But essentially what we've tried to do with our design and our layout, we've iterated every time. We've really tried to improve every time we partner with a new homeowner. But we've looked at creating separate private entrances so that you have space to come into your unit that's private. And then, like I said, there's a kitchenette, with a counter, space for a fridge, and a bathroom. This one shows a bath, but we've gone back to having showers. And the units are well designed and well finished. And the reason our sort of vision for Khayelitsha and the future of Khayelitsha is really, and why we see it as important to be investing in these spaces, is because there is such a big market. It's quite difficult to quantify the number, but what we're seeing a lot of is, in addition to interprovincial migration and in-migration from other provinces, if you think about it, the first RDPs were rolled out in the late 90s, this 20 years ago, and the children of the beneficiaries of those first houses now need to move out and to move on somewhere. And so it's about in-migration, but also like growth of population within these spaces. And really what we're trying to do at Bitprop is we're trying to, in addition to provide, wealth creation for homeowners, we're also looking at how we are able to create a sense of, why can't I think of the word? What's it like? Come on, Claire.
Community.
Well, not community. No, investment.
Culture.
Investment confidence.
What? Confidence. Thank you, Dylan.
Okay, right.
Investor confidence.
Is, after all, so just to, look, township investment is, it's probably not well understood. And I think this is what we're trying to get through in this particular session is to probably unpack that. And, and through, having the discussion with you guys, we hope to really unpack that. And especially between Prince and Dylan, they're going to elaborate. Yes, so I think there is, it's a new category. We need to understand it. And I think once investors understand it, it gives them that confidence.
Yeah, and I think so Dylan and Prince will definitely delve into it more. But I think for us is really, it's really about showing other investors, okay, well, firstly by creating a secure investment model where if you're, so you don't have to directly and do it yourself. You can invest through Bitprop, but also through the network of tenants we now have. We're constantly collecting information and data. So in 2 years' time, when we have over 1,000 tenants, we will have their information, the data around those tenants, their income brackets, their spending habits, etc., and we'll be able to go to bigger brands that have been scared to maybe come into township areas and be able to say, hey, look, this is, there is a market here. And we're really hoping that being an early adopter of investing in townships in South Africa allows the confidence of other investors to come in and for these spaces to really be transformed from the dormitory spaces and single residential spaces as I was describing in the beginning, to thriving neighborhoods and like a thriving CBD of sorts. So yeah, that's my
excellent.
Kind of
I think it's a great way to set the scene, Claire. I'm very fortunate that I've actually been on site, for a number of the Bitprop developments. So I've got the feel and I can understand it. And I must say I was absolutely blown away by the quality that was of the development, and as you demonstrated there, and the tenants were so happy, and the safety and all that. It was really eye-opening stuff. Anyway, we're moving on to Prince. So Prince, can you maybe just share your business, Ispani, and how does that sort of work, with Bitprop has done to fit in other words, what Bitprop has done in the broader landscape of work you've done in the space, and why do you see it as important to grow?
Thanks a million. Thank you so much for that question. I think first and foremost, so to give you guys context around Hispani is a business effectively that's a
Prince,
data.
can you just, can you just speak up or put the sound up just a little bit more? Maybe just talk a little bit louder. You're coming through quite softly. I'd like you just to maybe just, if you don't mind, to speak, but you
Okay,
were
cool.
much clearer early on, I must say.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, clear. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So to give you context, so Hispani is a data insights business. So we provide a platform through a network of agents. So it's a technology platform. And we have about 4,300 agents across South Africa. What they do is they collect data via a mobile platform, and that effectively comes onto our dashboard in real time. A lot of the data that we collect has largely been within the financial services space. And that more often than not influences product development and product advisory that happens into, or rather that's focused on the informal sector in this particular regard. So how do we restructure or think about lending products, insurance products that we can create firstly that are going to be purposeful? Because typically the sort of relationship that's always existed between financial services and our people in the context of the informal sector has always been one of an extractive nature in many ways. Because everyone just talks about this is such a big market that we can take value from, not actually thinking about how do we actually create value. So I think a lot of the data insights work we've been doing is really about humanizing the idea around financial services and financial inclusion. Then obviously we've got a bunch of other brands who also utilize our platform. So clients like you mentioned that have been in the energy space and the FMCG space. From effectively each campaign that we run, our agents act as the equivalent as Uber drivers, if you think of it in that sense. And on each campaign, they earn a commission on each specific data point that they collect. And then we're able to advise and provide strategic advisory to our clients in that particular regard. So where this specifically links then, I guess, in the context of Bitprop, and where, at least from my vantage point, and I think from the vantage point of the rest of the panels that we've seen, is the fact that Bitprop is doing something that's exceptionally purposeful. And why is it purposeful? I think the first part is that we've identified that backroom housing is a culture that actually exists in our country. So it's part of existing consumer behavior. It's part of existing building behavior. The question is, how do we catalyze that with the right sort of capital, funding, and financial model that actually results in growth and the development of that sector in that particular space? So I think that's the first component. The second component for us is the network effects that actually result as a consequence of enabling investment into this market, not just in the case of how it deepens financial inclusion, but far more importantly on if we think about both the direct and indirect impacts that emerge as a consequence. So Claire spoke about moving a couple of bricks in the context of the properties. And I guess the perspective I want to bring is that we empower local builders. That's an important thing to keep in mind. We're not pulling in Murray and Roberts to go and build buildings in the township. We're pulling in local entrepreneurs, local plumbers, local maintenance businesses. And what that does effectively is that it drives further development in the context of that specific environment, which I think is exceptionally powerful. So I think the network and the ecosystem effects are things that we need to specifically appreciate in the context of what Bitprop does. And then obviously how that equally plays a role in the context of our model in terms of how that spins off to the increased earning that comes to the homeowner and how that deepens financial integration in that specific instance. So for me, that's where, at least I think from the background that Hispani has and where Bitprop is at this particular point in time, that's where we see synergies, specifically in this instance. Obviously, I've been a big supporter of Bitprop personally because I buy into the vision of what it is that they do. I think that the impact is something that cannot be understated, both directly and indirectly. I think the other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the fact that what we've also started doing more recently is talking about making environments far more livable and far more connected, as we've started putting up Wi-Fi. And we've rolled out Wi-Fi, not just for our homes, but also the local community that live around those homes can actually begin to tether in. And that creates significant value in that specific instance. So I think the Bitprop model is one that has gone through iteration, but I think it's establishing, I think, a clear channel for not just development, but equally for investment in this particular regard into the township. And I think the more we have not just international capital coming in, but ordinary South Africans making a bet on on the township communities, we have a greater impact that we can create as a collective by lending our skills, our insights, and our capacity to this. So yeah, that's my perspective, and hopefully that provides.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. I think it's a great way to introduce the Prince. And Dylan, we're going to get on to you, also one of the co-founders of Bitprop. I mean, take us through the process that you go through from a new homeowner applying with Bitprop to having flats with tenants on their property. Because now, you know, for some people, I think, you know, this could not be, you know, won't be sort of something they're used to. There needs to be some kind of education process for that. So maybe just take us through that whole Bitprop process overall, then we can sort of, you know, get the picture to how people can get involved.
Sure, thanks, Neil. And there does have to be an education process, because it's not a simple thing going to someone's property and putting flats on you. It's a structure, immovable. So there are a lot of things that go into that, and a lot of the work we've done over the last years, and that I've done specifically, is how do I make the process understandable, easy to go through, efficient for us so that we can reach as many people as possible, what makes the most sense, you know, bringing in the architecture and the tenants and the home and education side of things. And so it's really been as Prince said, a very iterative process. So what I'll talk through now is the process, how all of that links in from when we get an application to when they've got flats. So as Claire mentioned, we've started in Khayelitsha in Cape Town for a number of reasons. The idea is not to only be in Khayelitsha. We very much expand across Cape Town and across the country. But we've started in Khayelitsha. Generally, most applicants we've received have come through word of mouth. You know, once we started building the first couple of properties, word spread like wildfire. So we get our applicants through word of mouth, sometimes through Facebook or other channels. And we try and capture as much information up front that will help us to assess, is this going to work, for a number of reasons, so that we don't have to, you know, so we can give a quick response to the homeowner one way or another. And so we'll look at, so they'll complete an application form, and we'll look at things like, is there enough space on their property to build flats? What sort of area are they in? Are they likely to have tenants? That sort of thing. And we go through a sort of an initial checklist to get a pre-approval of the property. And then we sit and discuss it as a team. We look at the applicant. We'll follow up to get more information from them if necessary. And then basically after that, we'll go straight to discussing things in more detail with the homeowner. And that'll be along the lines of, how does it work in detail? What are your responsibilities? What does Bitprop do? What are the flats going to look like? That sort of thing. And we reach agreement with the homeowner. And at the same time, or sort of as that process is concluding, we'll send it off to our design and architectural team. And they'll start applying our standard design to the specific property that we're looking at. And that'll be things like, how many flats can we fit on the property? Do they need to be slightly smaller or slightly larger depending on the size? Have we accommodated parking? Distance to transport, that kind of thing. And then eventually, we'll reach final agreement with the homeowner and send off the drawings to the city council to get approval, which takes a while as well. So we like to get that in as soon as possible. And while that's happening, we'll talk to our contracting team. So these are the guys that are going to actually be building the property. We'll submit the drawings. We'll discuss everything that needs to happen to come to a project agreement with them, so that we can build on the property in question. And then sort of the last stage before we start building is to go back to the homeowner, finalize it, discuss timelines, when is it going to happen, when is it going to start, you know, things like providing access to the property. And then we'll also do, as Claire mentioned briefly, an education process with the homeowner. And there are a lot of things to cover. Simple stuff like, or sort of rudimentary stuff like the details of the contract, how long it's going to take, you know, how tenants pay rent, that sort of thing. And then onto other stuff like advertising to find tenants, which I'll speak more about that later, but we do that hand in hand with the homeowner. Dealing with lease agreements, deposits, that sort of thing. Maintenance, you know, so we cover all the practical stuff related to the project. And then we also, something we've done since about a year ago, and this is something I'm working on a lot to try and improve, is how can we increase the education side of things to include financial literacy, property management expertise. We'd like to be able to accredit it. So we try and run all of that parallel to sort of before the build and as the build is starting. Okay, so then once it's all, you know, ready to go, our construction manager will work hand in hand with the contracting team and with our architectural team to oversee the project, make sure what, you know, the plans we've drawn are being implemented. And it's generally a sort of a 10-week process, give or take, based on rain and supplies and that sort of thing. And so the property goes from having nothing behind the house to having 4 or 6 or 8 flats over that time frame. And towards the end of that process, I'll meet with the homeowner and we'll discuss, okay, what kind of rent is applicable in this case, and how shall we start advertising, and when is a good time to do that. We'll take photos, we'll create any marketing material that the homeowner might ask for, and then together we'll start advertising for tenants so that we can get tenants in as close as possible to when the build is finished. And then, yeah, so, and then once the build is complete, as I said, we start moving tenants in, we'll provide lease agreements, collect deposits, so the tenants will pay rent to us, and the homeowner will be the point of contact on the property. And the way it works is our agreement will run for 10 years with the homeowner. And over that period, we collect a gross amount of rental depending on how many flats there are and what the rent per flat is. And we split it, the homeowner gets 15% of that gross. And we keep 85%, and we're responsible for covering maintenance and insurance on the property over that time frame. So, yeah, so we collect the rent each month, pay the 15% to the homeowner, which is an income they didn't have before. And then a lot of what...
Can I just interrupt you there?
Sure.
In the process of where they essentially become a partner owner, as you described it,
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for that title owner to fully own the entire property down the line? So where Bitprop hands over complete ownership, is there that kind of scenario as well?
So we don't actually take ownership at all. The homeowner
Right.
retains ownership, but we have a partnership agreement with them.
Okay.
For us to build these flats and for us to
Very important point.
pay that off. Yeah. So it's a good question. And then once the 10 years is over, then we're done effectively.
Yeah.
Then everything is there for the homeowner. And during that 10-year process, the services we're providing is rental management and maintenance effectively. Yeah. When we get to those 10 years, I mean, we've often discussed what happens then. Maybe the homeowner will still want us to help with that kind of thing. We don't know. We haven't reached the end. But effectively, to answer your question, they retain ownership from the beginning, but once our partnership is over, there's no commitment from their side. There's no obligation.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Yeah.
Did you want to add more to that, Dylan? Did you want to?
I was just going to say that the other sort of the final arm of that is the maintenance. So sort of the last stage of the ongoing process is maintenance. So we built a system where we can keep track of maintenance per flat and per property, and the homeowner reports it to us. As I said just now, we take responsibility for all the normal wear and tear and maintenance, repainting every few years, if things break, so, and that's been quite an important part of our model, because it's actually the most difficult part, I think, of running a property. And it's the thing that a new homeowner generally struggles with. You don't anticipate it beforehand, but suddenly you're overwhelmed with all these problems, and there's a cost associated with it. And if someone doesn't have water, they want it fixed immediately. So
for sure.
We built our system to be as helpful and efficient in that sense, so that for a homeowner coming on board with us, they're not really left in the lurch. We walk hand in hand with them from construction to the end of the process.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to jump into the questions, and I know, Claire, you've got to also run off a little bit earlier but there's quite a few here, and I think they're coming through fast and thick, but they're all relevant. And I think, what I'm going to do is they're general questions, and I maybe just say I would like to answer, but I'm going to start off with you, Claire, because your slide right at the front, when the investor gets involved at the front, you mentioned the two things: access to finance, professional services, obviously, that you use within local sort of industry or within the township. But you also mentioned the blacklisting, which South Africa seems to have an extremely very good blacklisting system. But, sometimes it could be something for really minor. So when somebody feels that they're blacklisted, that's the end. They never will be able to get a loan. Do you get involved in that in all? Or do you advise in any of that? Because that's quite an important part in terms of getting access to finance. How do you help out?
So for us, we ask the question. We also ask the question if you have a criminal record. I wish I had time for
the normal questions.
Yeah.
Normal sort of. Yeah.
But we don't. If you are blacklisted, it doesn't count against you in our application process, which is what sets us apart from other institutions or organizations that are doing similar stuff to Bitprop. We obviously in the education process that Dylan was mentioning, we talk about okay, now you're going to have this new income stream, revenue stream. What are some good financial practices that you should put in place? And we encourage people to start to use their additional income to pay off debt before they do anything else with the money. We don't actively get involved, but it is kind of there. But it also doesn't count against. So it's not something that will immediately disqualify you from qualifying for a Bitprop development.
Okay, I've got a question here from Sipa Boy from Harare, Kailicha. He says, we've been battling with the title deed issues for years with my family. Can Bitprop help in such issues?
So Bitprop, not Bitprop ourselves, but Bitprop, we have a very close working relationship with an organization called the Transaction Support Center, and they recently moved offices. I'm not sure where their offices are, but you can get our contact details and we can put you in contact with the Transaction Support Center. And they really are doing pioneering work around unblocking title deeds, dealing with incumbent properties, and they're a free or like a pay-as-you-can type of service.
Fantastic. Prince, I'm going to bring you in here. There's a general question, and also, on Prince, it isn't, if it's not right for you, I'm going to ask Dylan or even Claire just to pop in. We can do it as a roundtable discussion. The question is it legal to buy RDP housing? What are the pros and cons of buying RDP? So you want to give that a crack, Prince?
Well, I think I can give it a crack. To my understanding, government set out the RDP program primarily to solve the problem of housing. Now, when you buy an RDP house, what tends to happen is that individuals who are selling their RDP houses find their way back into the system again. And it actually creates backlog in that specific regard. So I wouldn't necessarily encourage it personally from my perspective, not that I'm a financial advisor, but there have been instances where that's actually caused some challenges as well on the ground in this specific regard.
Okay.
Yeah, and just
Yes,
to add
please.
to that, Neil. So what happens is when you're issued an RDP house, there's what I mentioned, the 8-year preemptive clause, and that means that you are given your house and you move into your house, but you only get your physical title deed 8 years later. And that preemptive clause is supposed to be there to avoid what Prince mentioned about like getting back into the RDP kind of line or queue for a house. That is where it is illegal. So it's illegal to buy a house from someone if they haven't got their title deed. So within those first 8 years of the first beneficiary moving in, that's when it is illegal.
Okay.
It's not illegal after that 8 years if you, but then I would recommend getting a proper conveyancer and going through the proper processes of having the transfer go through. Because often what we've also seen is even when there is a title deed, people try and purchase and it's not done properly, and then it gets stuck and it's never transferred into their name, and it can get quite complex.
Yeah, because I think getting the right title in your name, I think, is critically important. So, and I know that through that Kai Lam project, they've been big initiators with the municipalities, and they've done some fantastic work. And I know that's where sort of Bitprop was built on that. And they assist with that. And essentially, I think the donors, the people that have actually assisted them with finance, we've seen the Johan Ruperts, the Christo Visses of this world, and Cole Semelli, of course, of Bitprop, who actually invested in that to help people actually get title. Okay, so another question, yeah, and it's also a broad one, and I'm going to ask you to give us a crack, Dylan. How do you manage with zoning and bulk contribution fees with the municipalities, as this tends to be the biggest stumbling block? Dylan, do you want to give that a go?
I know that zoning is often an issue, but it's probably the thing that's furthest from my department, so I'm going to bring that over to Claire.
That's clear. So Claire, do you want to come in over there?
So one of the primary reasons we've been working with in Khayelitsha is because Khayelitsha has had an incredibly progressive director of the district planning office. And so there are a couple of clever little tricks that you can around when you put an application in, so you don't have to rezone the property. There's a couple of properties that we would like to work on in the future where we would like to go to mixed development, and then we would have to go like into a rezoning process. But at the moment, with the type of zoning that the properties we're working with, you're allowed a second dwelling, you're allowed a domestic quarter, and you're allowed like outside rooms. And so we can comfortably get 6 additionals within the zoning regulations, within the bulk of that. What's also incredible about the work that we've done over the last 2.5 years is that it's not been done in isolation. We've been working with other organizations. There's other similar investor companies like ourselves, also NGO groups, and collectively we have managed to work and continue to work with the City of Cape Town. And so there is a lot of incentivization work being done with the City of Cape Town to change the zoning, to do like a blanket change so that it will allow to not have to go through those rigorous and cumbersome rezoning processes. But for the meantime, we're working within the regulations and not rezoning properties.
Okay, because there was a question that if Bitprop can help with approved plans of units, and they actually mentioned it seems like a mission to get them from the City of Cape Town. So can you help with that, Claire?
Existing approved plans. Sorry, I don't quite get the question.
Well, I would assume, obviously, if you're going to be in partnership with Bitprop, I mean, that's one of the services that you would offer.
Yes.
So I think it's just really just getting approval, just getting confirmation of the fact that this is one of your services. And it seems to be
one
a
of our
big issue.
services.
It's a big thing, for somebody to be able to get those plans through.
Yeah, it's incredibly tricky, and recently, well, not recently, in the last 2 years, just after we started, it's a completely digitized submission process. So it's quite inaccessible if you don't have a professional on your side. So Bitprop can help with that, but we don't do it independently of. But I think the best kind of option for engaging is to submit our form. I think Dylan can leave a link to our form,
Okay, perfect.
and then we can address homeowners as they come with their different questions.
Perfect. All right, so I want to bring in Prince here. There's somebody that would like to roll out and says, are you open to duplicate your model in other provinces? Because obviously we're talking about Khayelitsha, Cape Town, Western Cape. And there's somebody that would love to drive it in the Eastern Cape. Are you looking for partners out there? Prince, do you want to add? I think Claire, Dylan, I think I'm going to put you all in over here.
I think obviously from a Bitprop perspective, we'd most definitely want to roll out all across the country. However, at this particular point in time, our current focus is in the Western Cape at this point, but I don't think that there would be any harm in us engaging at this point in time and getting to know the individual or the business better and see down the line if there might not be a potential opportunity for synergy. I'm necessarily passionate about the Eastern Cape because I grew up there in a small town called Queenstown, Ecoman, and I realized one of the comments was also from there. So definitely, I think I'd be more than open to engage with them at this point in time. But currently, it's not we are not going to be able to roll out to the Eastern Cape like tomorrow.
No.
Definitely,
no, absolutely. Sure, but I'm sure you're looking for partners, and there could be an opportunity to engage with you as the Bitprop team. Claire, I know your time is running out because I know you have to rush off you're a busy lady, I understand. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to give your wrap in the meantime, and then we can carry on with Dylan and Prince. There's a few more questions for you that's specifically for you, Dylan, that people have asked. But Claire, do you want to maybe leave people with this sort of, your sort of leave them with something that they can take away to say, well, I really want to get into township investments. These are the great reasons, and leave them with something, you know, some kind of inspiration, some kind of excitement.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for the incredible engagement. It's been really great to have so many good questions coming through, and challenging questions as well. I had a really horrible incident last week somewhere else, not in Khayelitsha, where I was mugged, and someone said to me, so you can't go back, like surely you're going to change your work now. And for me it was even more reason to continue the work that we do, and that we do in Bitprop. And the only way that we're going to address sort of the desperation and the extremes that exist in our the desperation that comes from the extremes that exist in our country is by working to improve the livelihoods of people across the country. And I think for me, dignity through housing is and through quality public space is something that is so important. And I think through this model, you know, we're investing in backyards, but in time that, you know, once our model is rolling and we're able to scale, Bitprop will start to look at the public spaces around, and that will keep growing. And hopefully, like I mentioned, we'll be able to get other investors to crowd in. And in time, these spaces that are perceived as so dangerous and are so full of desperation will not be dangerous or desperate. They will be thriving neighborhoods where, you know, you and I would want to live just as much as, you know, we want to live in, I don't know, Sea Point or Newlands. And so I think to really put aside any fears, preconceived ideas of the dangers, and to really just, and also like purely from a financial point of view, like Prince will talk more about it, I'm sure, but that's where the growth of the market is, and I think it's a really, really exciting place to be. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your wrap, Claire. And so I think, you know, we will excuse you for now. If there are some questions specifically for Claire, please send it through to us. We'll ensure she gets it and then she can engage with you directly. I think your input was wonderful. I think thank you for doing such a fantastic job, and your inspiration has been really awesome. And I know you're also studying as well part-time. You're passionate, so you know, keep doing what you're doing and doing it well. And so thank you for being on the show. I'm not going to say goodbye to Dylan and to Prince yet. You guys must hang on. We've still got some more. But cheers to you, Claire. We'll see you later. Please engage with her. If you want to reach out to Claire, please. We will send the details on. Okay, so Dylan and Prince, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a sort of a wrap and a sort of a roundup of all the final sort of questions that we haven't covered yet, because I would like to just make sure that we do cover those that have not been answered. And so Dylan and I'm going to bring both of you to probably do a tandem, and you feel you can add value to it, just bring it on that basis. So specifically support. What kind of support will I get to manage my property effectively? Do you assist in rent collection? I think you did cover that already, Dylan. So you could probably, I mean, I understand you do, but you could probably just touch on that. And then, of course, do you do skills transfer to homeowners in that 10 years? Okay. So it's probably like an educational type thing. And are all the building costs covered by Bitprop and covered over the 10-year payback period? So what else is due by the owner? So it's probably related to the finance. Maybe Prince, you could probably, you know, that could be your domain there. And do you have a minimum amount of rooms? And is the term of lease set for 10 years? Okay, so maybe you could just touch on that. And another question linked to that one is, can the homeowner opt out of the partnership or buy you out before the end of 10 years? And then the last one is related to funding models. I know it's quite a lot to digest, but I think what I'd like you to do is to probably put it into sort of your final thoughts and your final. The last one is, what other funding models does Bitprop have apart from this model where you split shareholding with property owners following development?
I guess the question on the property building side, so Bitprop bears all costs of building. So we put in our own capital, build the entire building. Like Dylan mentioned, we also provide the ongoing maintenance as a consequence in that particular regard. So I think that kind of addresses that particular question that was asked. Cool. I'll speak to the skills transfer one, and then I'll leave Dylan with the most difficult questions.
Okay.
So
he does the difficult ones.
So on the skills transfer piece, that in part actually there's a lot of work that Dylan's already done, and that's from a Bitprop perspective that's been done specifically around homeowner training. And the exciting thing as well that we're soon going to be doing, and something that I'm specifically working on quite intentionally with other guys in the team, really is around what we're calling the Bitprop Foundation, which is soon to launch. And the exciting part about that is that that's really going to be speaking a lot to how do we empower homeowners from a rental management perspective, a homeowner training perspective, also from an entrepreneurial training perspective, to also grow their portfolios beyond just Bitprop as well. So that's really exciting. And that's something that we've already started doing in many ways. But this is now just going to be housed within the context of the foundation. And there's also a lot of entrepreneurial support that we're also going to be offering to builders and construction workers into the future. Both those that are part of Bitprop and also those that aren't necessarily part of Bitprop, but are operating within the context of the informal sector and the township economy. So that's a portfolio that I'm passionate about, and it's something we're driving. So we'll be hearing about that soon. So yeah, I just wanted to let the community know that this is something that's definitely on our hearts and our minds at this point in time.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I guess Dylan, I'll leave you to add a bit more to that.
And then just your final thoughts there, Prince. Maybe just give us your 30-second sort of final sort of takeaway.
Cool. So I guess my simple takeaway is to say that we spoke about impact investing. We mentioned it as an initial point when we started this webinar. And I guess there's nothing more that typifies impact investing than what Bitprop is doing, because the impact is not just in terms of the financial capital. We're talking about the livelihoods of people. We're talking about transforming our communities. And I think that as property investors and as investors in general, there's nothing that provides, in my opinion at least, that I've come across to date, an opportunity to do such direct impact as Bitprop. I think there are a bunch of other organizations that are in the ecosystem and equally doing a lot of great work. But I think when it comes to the property sector and it comes to the informal sector, both from my vantage point as someone that's been in the data space, I think the numbers speak for itself. And I think the lives that we've touched have equally been quite real. So I would continue to encourage individuals to continue to deploy your capital into the informal sector where you see opportunities, and specifically in the township development environment, primarily because of the impact, like I mentioned earlier, that it will have further into your community and your surroundings. But overall, I think it's something that as South Africans, we need to do more. We all have the typical aspiration. We want to live in Sandhurst or Sandton or Newlands. But I think the new growth opportunities is not just in those upper market suburb communities. There's opportunity right in Soweto, right in our doorstep, right in Khayelitsha. And why shouldn't we invest and drive growth in those particular environments? And that's my encouragement to all of us. And thank you, Neil, as well, for an absolutely amazing opportunity.
Prince, would I mean, from CEO of Isipani and emerging markets driver for Bitprop, thank you very much. I think it's been a great discussion. I think there's going to be lots of questions. And thank you for being part of the panelists. So Dylan, you got the final say. So maybe you can sort of pull this whole thing together and maybe address one or two of the questions and give your final thoughts, your parting shots, and to end off this, I think, very interesting webinar.
Sure. So I just wanted to add to what Prince was saying about the training, over that 10-year process. As he mentioned, we're doing a lot of work to expand that, improve on the training we provide. But the idea is that we partner with the homeowner and train them to be a property manager of their property, but with transferable skills, so that by the end of that 10-year period, they can, they'll be fully competent to do it on their own. So I think just to answer that question, it's not, it's a hand-in-hand process. We're not building on the property and then leaving and then disappearing and waiting for rent each month. And then to address some of the other questions, the time frame is fixed at 10 years. There is the possibility of buying it out, and that obviously depends on the metrics of the property and where we are in the process. But it's generally fixed at 10 years. There are no, as Prince mentioned, there are no costs. There's no money invested by the homeowner that comes from Bitprop. So Bitprop's financial model is we get investment from other investors, and through the rent that, and then we build the property and obviously maintenance and everything. And the rent we collect, the portion we keep goes back to recover those capital costs and to provide a return to the investors to incentivize reinvestment. So it's a way to create a sustainable investment model in the township market that can encourage more investment. We want to be a catalyst for investment into. Did I touch on all the questions there?
Yes, you did. I think the one that you didn't was, do you have a minimum amount of rooms? And is the term of lease set for 10 years? Because I think that's the model. I think your model is 8. I'm not quite sure, but you maybe must share.
The lease is set at 10 years. In terms of the number of rooms, it depends on the property. We've done a 2-room property. We've done a few 8-room properties. We're kind of settled on 6 at the moment, but we're pragmatic about it. What's the size of the property? So, if you get too large, if you go 10, 12 flats, it becomes complicated with council approval, touching on what Claire was speaking about. So generally, it's 4, 6, or 8 is probably standard.
So Dylan, I think give us your final wrap. Give us your final takeaway that everybody can take away today. And I think we've had a great audience. Thank you for coming on board today. It's been a great turnout. We've had some fantastic questions. I think there's a lot of interest in here. So I think leave people with some inspirational, but more something that they can take away. Your parting shots.
I think, my feeling is I just want people to get involved. I just want people to get involved, whether as an investor, as a homeowner, or if they just want to find out more, or help us with content, or with there's so many different things we want to develop. How do we make our properties more environmentally friendly? How do we, it's quite a complex thing we're putting together, and it's just the excitement that I feel when people do get involved and they see what we're doing, and they realize there's so much potential within the space we're working in. It's that excitement is very palpable. So I want people to get involved. As I said before, this is, we're trying to create a model that incentivizes investment, formal capital into a township market that most formal capital owners are reluctant to get into. So we're doing the hard work to create a model that makes it, you don't have to go and build houses. You can invest through Bitprop or through something else. Or maybe we can encourage someone else to start something similar, which also brings more people into to invest in this massive social and economic opportunity. So we want to be a catalyst for that. A catalyst to bring investment and interest and awareness to a massive part of the South African economy that is unfortunately overlooked. So thank you so much for having us.
Yes. Well, thank you.
I've really enjoyed it.
And I think we need people like yourself. We need companies. We need the princes of the world. We need the Dylans and the Claires, because really, I think you are a sounding board. You are an educational source for people wanting to break into that market. You've got the experience. I'm asking everybody to reach out to them. I mean, we will give the information for those that have requested to be in touch with Prince and Dylan. Can you believe it? It's come to the end of the webinar. We've gone over a little bit of time, but a lot of people have actually hung on. So it does say that they are interested. So can you believe it? It's the end of the webinar again. So I want to thank you, Dylan and Prince, and obviously Claire's not here. She had to leave a little bit earlier. Thank you for your wonderful contribution. To you, the audience, thank you for joining us and your participation today. We hope you enjoyed it and got value. Reminders, don't miss our next webinar. It's on Wednesday, the 14th of July, 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. It's investing alongside the developer. We also unpack the residential markets. It's the more traditional markets. And we've got John Lewis of FNB and Bed Kodazang. He's also an expert in that sort of area as well. And I think, those are the kind of people we need to sort of encourage township investment as well there, which in fact, a lot of the banks are reporting already. Then, of course, a reminder about the Real Estate Investors' 3rd Annual Digitalization Virtual Summit. And I think our plans is to get Bitprop involved, because they do have some blockchain technology involved in some of that titles. So it'd be wonderful to have you involved as panelists. On the Thursday, the 22nd of July, the 29th of July, the 5th and the 12th of August, 12 to 1 o'clock for 4 weeks on a Thursday. That's the mini series. That's free to attend. So to book, you just click on the link below, or you register on the REI Mag website. And then, of course, then there's the actual summit, which is the Digitalization of Real Estate Summit. It's going to be 5 hours. It's going to take place on Thursday, the 19th of August from 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And it's probably going to be the biggest prop tech and digitalization of real estate event we've had so far. We're using brand spanking new, groundbreaking new 3D webinar technology never used before in South Africa before. It allows massive opportunity to engage and interact with delegate speakers and just to, wow. So it's something you've got to attend. And for the summit, it's a 5-hour summit. Early bird tickets are only 397 rands per person. You've got to be there. If you want to know what's happening in prop tech and who the leaders are, it's the place to book. You can click on the links below. Just look in the box below. Otherwise, just go onto the REI Mag website. And that ends it. I'm going to end off with a quote of the day. To be successful in real estate, you must find your niche and always and consistently put your client's best interests first. And when you do, your personal needs will be realized beyond your greatest expectations. And that came from Anthony Hetz, who's a real estate professional. So thank you once again for joining the REI Talk investment webinar today. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on Wednesday, the 14th of July at 12 o'clock. And don't forget about our 3rd Annual Digitalization of Real Estate Summit in July and August. We'll see you there. For the rest of you, stay safe and successful investing. This is Neil Peterson of Real Estate Investor signing out.